If you're new here, hit that like, subscribe, and drop a comment, because what you're about to hear isn't just another space legend. It's the story the Galactic Council tried to erase. A story about the day the universe's most feared myth didn't rise to hunt, but bowed. The chamber of the Galactic Assembly shimmered under the pale light of Irinder Prime's twin suns. 1,000 species watched from their hovering seats, their voices a static of discontent. At the center, beneath the gleaming sigil of the Council, Envoy Kareth of the Thraxi Dominion stood alone, his emerald scales dull under the scrutiny of the universe's most powerful beings. "This is not rumor," Kareth said, forcing his voice to remain steady. "This is evidence." A creature matching human morphology was sighted on the frontier moon of Voron 6. It moved upright, spoke in coherent language and... "Spoke?" interrupted a counselor from the Athex Enclave, her 4 eyes narrowing. "And what did it say, Envoy? Boo?" Ripples of laughter scattered through the chamber. Kareth did not flinch. He'd expected mockery. The idea of a human surviving the soul collapse was absurd to them, a child's tale told to frighten soldiers into vigilance. He tapped the control pad on his wrist. A hologram flickered into life, grainy and distorted, a recording captured from the body cam of a Silith mercenary. In it, a figure in worn armor stood before a massive, tusked war beast. The creature, bred to tear through tanks, halted mid-charge. Slowly, impossibly, it lowered its head. It bowed. The laughter died. Kareth allowed the silence to stretch. "That," he said softly, "is no rumor. That is the bow of the Predator." Counselor Lurian of the Vath Consortium leaned forward, her voice dripping with disdain. "You suggest this relic of flesh and bone commands a Silith? That an extinct primate commands fear from a weapon beast designed to obey only us?" "I suggest," Kareth replied, "that perhaps extinction is not as permanent as we hoped." The murmurs began, threads of panic woven through disbelief. For centuries, humanity had been the Council's unspoken scar, the name no one dared invoke. Their world had burned not merely by chance but by decree, erased from the stars for crimes whispered but never confirmed. The predators of soul, they'd called them, reckless, war-born, impossible to control. When the Terran fleets fell, the Council promised peace had returned. Peace, Kareth thought grimly, built on ash. He could feel his heart pulse against the scales of his chest plate. He'd studied the human archives, what fragments remained. They were not gods or demons, not even superior soldiers. Yet in every story, from the War of Orion's Reach to the Siege of Ura Prime, there was something unmistakable, a defiance that outlived reason. "Envoy," said Elder Saruan, his voice old as dust, "what proof have you that this apparition is truly human?" Kareth zoomed in on the footage, magnifying the armor's insignia. A worn emblem, circular, half-scorched, but unmistakable. A faint blue sphere divided by white lines. The human symbol for Earth. Gasps echoed through the chamber. "It cannot be," someone whispered. Kareth looked up, his expression calm though his stomach churned. "You can deny what you see. You can bury another truth. But the myth stands alive on Voron 6. And if it still breathes, the galaxy must ask why." The chamber erupted. Some demanded an immediate purge fleet, others called for containment or study. Kareth watched the chaos unfold with quiet unease. He had not expected them to listen, but he had not expected such terror either. When the uproar finally settled, Elder Saruan's voice cut through. "Very well, Envoy. You will lead an investigative contingent to Voron 6. If this human exists, you will confirm it. If it does not, then the myth dies again," Kareth finished. He bowed, concealing the tremor in his claws. As the chamber emptied, a voice behind him spoke, low, rasping, ancient. "You court danger, Thraxi. Legends are not meant to be found." Kareth turned. The speaker was the archivist, a figure of shadow wrapped in robes that smelled of dust and ozone. Few had seen his face. He was said to remember the oldest wars, the ones before the Council united the stars. "Tell me, archivist," Kareth said, "is it true what they say? That humanity was destroyed because they were too violent to coexist?" The archivist's chuckle was hollow. "Violence? No, not violence. Fear. Fear. They feared what humans did not need claws or wings or shells to do. They feared a creature that made tools from stone, ships from dust, weapons from light. They feared a mind that did not wait for evolution's permission." Kareth's throat tightened. "Then we killed them for being clever?" "We killed them," the archivist whispered, "because they refused to kneel." The words hung in the air long after the figure vanished. Kareth lingered by the hologram, replaying the moment the war beast bowed. The human stood motionless, no display of power, no threat, no weapon raised. Just presence. It wasn't dominance the creature commanded, it was recognition. The beast had known it was in the presence of something older than fear. He closed the recording and stared out at the twin suns setting beyond the assembly dome. Somewhere on a distant moon, a myth waited. Later, aboard the Thraxi vessel Silent Spear, Kareth recorded his log. His voice was calm, deliberate. Envoy Kareth, mission commencement. Objective: verify human existence on Vorin 6. Secondary objective: survive the truth. He paused, glancing once more at the paused frame of the human figure. If it is real, then everything we know about the Council's peace, about what we are, may not survive this discovery. He turned off the recorder and watched as the stars stretched into lines of silver. The ship leapt into FTL, its hum deep and steady. Far behind him, in the empty council chamber, the recording of the bow still glowed faintly in the dark. The last frame frozen on the bowed warbeast, and behind it, the figure of a human standing still against the void as though waiting for the universe to remember. And somewhere in that silence between galaxies, the myth opened its eyes. The wind screamed across Vorin SX's fractured plains, scattering pale dust over the bones of a long-dead creature. Commander Rian Vale crouched beside the skeleton, studying the jagged fractures that ran through the skull. Something had killed it recently, something faster, hungrier, alive. He adjusted the cracked visor of his helmet, its edges charred from too many patch repairs, and muttered to the small hovering drone at his shoulder. Echo thermal sweep. 10 kilometers. 10 clicks scanned, the AI replied, voice clipped and toneless. One active heat source moving southeast. Pattern irregular. Non-mechanical. Rian grunted. Perfect. He rose from the dust, every motion deliberate. Even in exhaustion, his body carried the coiled grace of a predator who had spent too long surviving on instinct. His armor was mismatched, scavenged from wreckage and wars the Council never admitted to fighting. On the left pauldron, faded but visible, was the insignia of the Earth Defense Corps, a relic of a world burned out of the stars. Rian didn't dwell on that world anymore. The past had teeth, and every memory of soul gnawed at him when the nights stretched too long. But survival demanded silence, not sentiment. He'd survived because he'd refused to vanish like the rest of his kind. He moved through the ravine, rifle low, eyes scanning the ridgelines. The frontier moons had no rhythm. Sunlight came and went without warning, storms birthed from still air. Everything on Vorin 6 wanted to eat, kill, or hide. Rian respected that. It was the only honest thing left in the galaxy. Echo's light blinked red. Motion ahead. 2 meters tall. For legs. Accelerating. Rian dropped to one knee and slid a charge from his belt, a fragmentary sonic mine, and pressed it into the rock. The creature appeared moments later, a shimmer against the dust. Chitinous plates glistened in the dim light. It was the size of a horse, all muscle and fang. He didn't shoot. Not yet. He waited until it lunged, until the air itself seemed to twist around its leap and then triggered the mine. The blast was silent, pressure without noise. The beast collapsed mid-air, disoriented. Rian moved fast, knife drawn, one swift cut under its jaw where the armor plates thinned. The creature spasmed once and went still. He wiped his blade on the dust, scanning the ridges. No other movement. Tag it, he said. Protein salvage 2 days' worth. Logged, Echo replied. Advisory, detected orbital entry. Metallic signature. Council make. Rian froze. Repeat, he said quietly. Unregistered vessel. Vector suggests descent within 20 kilometers. He exhaled slowly. 4 years he'd hidden from the eyes of the Council, the architects of his species' extinction. He'd watched their fleets patrol the stars and told himself they'd forgotten him. But the galaxy didn't forget. It circled back sooner or later. Rian climbed the ridge to higher ground. From there, the horizon shimmered under a copper sky. A streak of light cut through the clouds, an atmospheric entry, deliberate, controlled. The Council wasn't here by accident. He powered down Echo's beacon and crouched beside the ridge. His mind ran through possibilities: reconnaissance, extermination, retrieval. It didn't matter which. They'd come for the same reason they destroyed Earth, because humanity made them afraid. The transport touched down in the basin below, kicking up clouds of ash. Rian's visor auto-tinted against the glare. He counted the figures that emerged, 7, maybe 8 shapes in polished armor. One moved differently. Slower, more deliberate. the leader. They spread in a tight formation, scanning with sleek instruments. Professional. Military. But cautious. He could see it in the way their weapons tracked every shadow. They expected danger, but they didn't understand what kind. Rian whispered, "Echo audio enhancement." The comlink amplified the distant voices. He caught fragments, life readings, surface contamination, motion vectors. Then another voice, lower, controlled, speaking in perfect galactic common. "Maintain perimeter. We're not here to conquer a myth. We're here to confirm one." Rian smiled faintly. So that was it. Confirmation. Proof he existed. Proof the council's clean, ordered galaxy still had ghosts. He waited until nightfall before moving. The moons of Voron 6 cast uneven light, blue and red across the stone. He slipped through the darkness with the patience of a hunter. Every step measured, every breath shallow. He'd spent years learning to be invisible. To them, humans were extinct, an entry in a classified archive. That belief kept him alive. When he reached their perimeter, he studied their equipment. Biometric scanners, motion detectors, perimeter drones. Advanced but predictable. He'd built better in his youth with scrap metal and desperation. He found the blind spot between two scanners and stepped through. Up close, he saw their insignia, symbols of the Thraxi Dominion, one of the Council's oldest factions. The leader stood apart, staring at the sky. A tall, reptilian figure, his scales reflecting faint light. Rian recognized the posture. An observer, not a soldier. The diplomat. He could have killed them all. His rifle scope tracked each target effortlessly. But that wasn't what he wanted. Not yet. He wanted them to understand what they were hunting. He tapped his wrist console. The nearest perimeter drone flickered, shorted out, and fell from the air. One of the soldiers shouted, swinging a weapon toward the ridge. Another drone crashed, then another. Panic rippled through their formation. The diplomat raised a clawed hand. "Hold fire." Rian stepped from the shadows, rifle lowered, mask glinting in the moonlight. For a long moment, no one spoke. The reptilian envoy regarded him quietly, eyes narrowing with something between awe and dread. "You're real," he said. Rian's voice was calm, cold, human. "You're trespassing." The soldiers shifted, uncertain. The envoy held up a hand to stop them. "We've come seeking truth, not blood." Rian tilted his head slightly. "Funny. That's what your council said before they burned my world." A silence heavier than the wind followed. The envoy's pupils constricted. "You are Rian Veil of Earth?" Was Rian corrected. "Earth doesn't exist anymore." The envoy hesitated. "If you are what we believe, you could change everything we know about your kind." "Everything you chose to know," Rian said. Echo's voice broke in softly over the comm, multiple signals approaching. Second ship inbound. Rian's expression hardened. "You brought friends." "No," the envoy said, alarm flickering in his tone. "That's not ours." Rian turned his gaze skyward. Another streak of light pierced the clouds, faster, heavier, coming in hot. Dropships. Armed ones. He raised his weapon and looked back at the envoy. "Looks like your council doesn't want witnesses." The envoy's soldiers shifted uneasily. Rian stepped backward into the shadowed ridge, his voice carrying through the wind. "You came looking for a myth," he said. "Now let's see if you survive meeting it." Then he was gone, swallowed by the dark, leaving the envoy and his team staring at the falling fire from the heavens, wondering if they had just found humanity's last ghost or awakened something far worse. The second ship's descent tore the clouds apart like a blade through fabric, scattering molten light across the basin. Kareth shielded his eyes as the vessel struck ground several kilometers east, its stabilizers screaming against the wind. The ground trembled under the impact, and dust rose high enough to blot out the moons. He could already tell from the sound of its engines that this was not a survey transport. It was military. His soldiers bristled, weapons raised toward the horizon. "Envoy," one hissed through his rebreather, "orders?" Kareth said nothing. His eyes were fixed on the ridge where the human had vanished moments before. The air there shimmered faintly, disturbed by the heat of exhausts or by something unseen. He felt a tightening in his chest, a strange, cold instinct he hadn't known since his youth on Thrax, when predators stalked the marshes and only silence kept you alive. "Recall all patrols," he ordered. "Form a perimeter. Stay low." The soldiers obeyed, but reluctantly. They were Thraxi born to dominance, raised to believe fear was a defect. Yet Kareth saw it in their movements now, the measured hesitation that marked prey beginning to understand it was being watched. He activated his communicator. Unidentified vessel. This is Envoy Kareth of the Thraxi Dominion, under mandate of the Galactic Council. Identify your purpose and allegiance. Static. Then a curt, mechanical voice. No response required, Envoy. Mission priority is containment. Withdraw immediately. Kareth's scales stiffened. Containment. That was a word the Council used when they meant eradication. He turned toward the soldiers. They're not here to assist. They're here to clean up. The lead trooper frowned. Clean up what? Kareth glanced toward the ridge. Us. The trooper's reply was cut short by a sudden whine from above. A swarm of drones spilled from the descending ship like black rain, each one armed and scanning. The sky became a web of moving light. Within seconds, the first explosion rippled through the valley where his scouts had gone silent. Kareth drew his sidearm, though it was symbolic. No weapon he carried could stand against the Council's purge craft. He opened a private channel to his ship, Silent Spear. Prepare emergency extraction. Transmit all records of this encounter to the Thraxi High Chamber. Encrypt under code. A burst of static swallowed his words. Jamming field. The Council had silenced every frequency. Then the voice came again, calm, almost casual, from the shadows near the ridge. You weren't supposed to die for them, Envoy? Kareth spun, aiming his weapon toward the sound. The human stepped into view, moving without haste as though the chaos overhead were nothing but background noise. His visor gleamed faintly in the light of the fires. You knew they'd come, Kareth said. I knew they'd panic, Rian replied. They always do when their lies start breathing again. Kareth studied him carefully. You could run. Disappear again. But you stayed. I don't run anymore, Rian said. His voice held the worn steadiness of someone long past fear. I needed to see what they'd send. Now I know. A tremor of light flared across the sky. Orbital bombardment markers. Preparations for a sterilization strike. Kareth felt his pulse quicken. They'll burn this moon to glass. They've done worse, Rian said. And it never lasts. You can erase a world but not what it taught us. He turned toward the basin where the Council soldiers were regrouping under the storm of drones. You want to live through this, Envoy? Then you'd better stop thinking like a Council man. Kareth hesitated. The rational part of him whispered to stay with his own, protocol, loyalty, structure, but the instinct that had kept his ancestors alive told him something else. This human understood survival in a way no Council species ever had. What do you suggest? He asked quietly. Rian crouched beside a jagged outcrop of rock and slid a small device into the ground. You follow orders too much. I set traps. He pressed a button. The ridge erupted in silent flashes as concealed charges ignited. Drones above jerked, lost signal and crashed into the dirt. The night became chaos. Kareth watched as Rian moved through it all with an uncanny precision. Never rushed, never uncertain. Each motion calculated to exploit the enemy's predictability. It was elegant in its brutality. He began to understand why the Council feared them. Humanity didn't dominate through strength. They adapted faster than fear could keep up. Within minutes, half the drones were down. The second ship's troops advanced blindly into the smoke. Rian fired twice, disabling their scanners, then motioned to Kareth. Time to move. They slipped through a crevice between rocks, descending into an old mining tunnel long buried by dust. The deeper they went, the cooler the air became. Kareth's breathing slowed, but his mind raced. You've been hiding here for years. Long enough to know what kind of ghosts your Council buries, Rian said. And you blame us for your people's extinction? Rian stopped. For the first time, Kareth saw his face as the visor retracted, scarred, pale, eyes bright and steady. No. I blame fear. The kind that wears armor and calls itself civilization. Kareth held his gaze. If the Council destroyed you out of fear, what do you want now? Revenge. Rian shook his head. Truth. And maybe a chance to remind the galaxy what it used to mean to be alive. A tremor rolled through the ground above them, the first orbital strike. Dust fell from the tunnel ceiling like rain. Kareth steadied himself against the wall. We won't last long here. Rian activated a small holographic map, lines glowing faintly blue. There's a crash site to the south. Old transport. Still has subspace shielding. Enough to mask a ship if you know how to use it. You think we can reach it before the next volley? I think we don't have a choice. Kareth studied the map, then the man beside him. This was the creature his people had erased, the predator of soul. Yet there was no savagery here, only an impossible calm. Not a monster but something older. Enduring. They emerged from the tunnel onto a ledge overlooking the burning basin. Fires painted the valley in crimson light. The second council ship was crumbling under the shockwaves of Rian's traps. Kareth felt a flicker of awe, not fear. "They'll send more," he said. "Let them," Rian replied. "They'll learn faster this time." He turned to Kareth, eyes narrowing slightly. "You still think I'm just a myth, envoy?" Kareth's throat was dry. "No. But I'm starting to wonder if the myth was the council itself." Another explosion thundered through the night, closer this time. Rian activated a beacon on his wrist. A pulse of light shimmered briefly, then vanished into the dark sky. "What was that?" Kareth asked. "A reminder," Rian said quietly. "Even when they buried us, some of our machines kept listening." Far above them, a faint answering signal blinked in the clouds. Kareth stared upward, realization dawning. "You're not alone," he whispered. Rian's expression didn't change. "We never were. The universe just forgot to look hard enough." The next blast wave rolled across the ridge, and both men turned toward the storm of fire, their fates now tied not by loyalty but by survival, and by the uneasy understanding that the war the council thought it ended might just be beginning again. The night was fractured by distant detonations. Each blast painted the horizon with red light, stretching shadows long across the ravine where Rian and Kareth crouched beside the remains of an ancient transport. The air smelled of ozone and scorched rock. The ship's hull was split open, its innards a graveyard of twisted metal and forgotten circuits. Yet beneath the wreckage, power still pulsed faintly, a heartbeat buried under centuries of dust. Rian worked in silence, hands steady as he rerouted the old shielding nodes through a portable generator. The human's movements were purposeful, efficient. Kareth watched, his curiosity sharpening with each gesture. This man, this relic, handled alien technology as though instinct guided him through every wire and code. "How did you learn all this?" Kareth asked quietly. Rian didn't look up. "You learn when you're the last one left to fix what breaks." The generator hummed to life. A translucent field shimmered over the ridge, bending light until the sky itself seemed to warp. From orbit it would look like empty terrain. A hiding place carved from the bones of an old war. Kareth glanced at the field's glow. "That won't hold long against the council's scan." "It doesn't have to," Rian replied. "Just long enough for them to get curious." Kareth frowned. "Curious?" Rian's expression hardened. "You'll see." Moments later, the ground began to vibrate with the rhythmic thrum of engines. Dropships, dozens this time, descending in formation. The council wasn't retreating. They were escalating. Kareth's comlink crackled as his own fleet's encrypted channel broke through the jamming field. "Envoy Kareth, your position is compromised. Stand down and prepare for retrieval." He hesitated. The voice was familiar, the Thraxi command. His superiors. He should have obeyed. But something inside him, something long dormant, resisted. Rian turned toward him. "If you call them, they'll burn this place flat." "They're my people," Kareth said. "They're their people," Rian replied evenly. "You just wear their insignia." Kareth stared at him. "You really believe you can fight them all?" "I don't need to fight them," Rian said, watching the sky. "I just need to show them something they've never seen." Before Kareth could ask, Rian strode toward the open clearing, rifle slung across his back. The shimmer of the shield distorted his silhouette until he seemed less man than phantom. The dropships touched down in waves, their landing thrusters flattening the dust into glass. Armored soldiers poured out, their weapons trained, movements perfectly synchronized. One of the command vessels projected a hologram into the air, a council marshal, cloaked in ceremonial blue, her voice amplified and cold. "Unregistered human entity. You are charged with violation of council quarantine protocols, occupation of restricted territory, and the continuation of a proscribed lineage. By decree your existence is terminated." Rian said nothing. He stepped beyond the shimmer of the shield and into the open. Kareth watched from the wreckage, pulse hammering. The soldiers tightened their formation. Rian raised a hand and unclipped his helmet, letting it fall to the ground. The light caught his face, human, scarred but unflinching. "You call this justice?" His voice carried easily through the wind. "You erase a species and when one crawls out of the ashes you call it a crime?" The marshal's hologram flickered. Humanity was extinguished for the stability of the galaxy. Rian smiled faintly. "Stability's a word for fear that's been polished too long." The first shot came from the flank, plasma bolt, clean and deliberate. It struck the ground inches from his feet. He didn't move. Another followed, then another. Rian stood as the air shimmered with heat. When the smoke cleared, the soldiers hesitated. None of their shots had connected. Kareth realized why. The ground beneath Rian was alive with light, thin, angular lines etched into the soil, pulsing with energy. Traps. Dozens of them, invisible until triggered. Rian's calm wasn't defiance. It was timing. The mines detonated outward, not to kill but to blind and disorient. The air filled with a blinding white flare. Council troops scattered. In the chaos, Rian moved, fluid, silent, impossibly fast. He wasn't attacking, he was dismantling. One strike disabled a comm array, another a power core. Within seconds, an entire platoon's equipment flickered out. Kareth joined the fight, though his weapon was useless compared to Rian's precision. He focused on covering flanks, marking movements. For the first time he fought not for the council but for truth. The ground quaked again, a heavier rhythm this time. A shadow fell across the battlefield. Kareth looked up and felt his blood run cold. The Silith warbeast descended from the lead dropship, its body armored in alloy plating, eyes burning amber. The creature roared, its voice shaking the dust from the cliffs. The same species from the footage. The one that had bowed. The soldiers formed a perimeter around it, weapons aimed. The marshal's hologram reappeared. End this, human. No more illusions. Rian walked forward alone. The soldiers raised their rifles, but the marshal signaled them to hold. Kareth whispered, "You can't face that thing unarmed." Rian didn't answer. He stopped a few paces from the beast. Its breath came in deep, thunderous waves. Every instinct told Kareth to run, but he couldn't look away. The Silith stepped closer. The ground cracked under its weight. Its jaws parted, revealing rows of molten teeth. Then, slowly, impossibly, its head dipped. Its body lowered to one knee. The warbeast bowed. Gasps rippled through the ranks of soldiers. Even the marshal's image wavered. Kareth felt the air shift, the sound of power itself being redefined. Rian stood before the bowed creature, his voice steady. "You taught it obedience. We taught it choice. That's the difference." Kareth raised his wrist console, broadcasting on all open frequencies. The image of the kneeling beast and the human standing before it transmitted across every council channel. Billions would see it within minutes. The myth, alive and undeniable. "Envoy," the marshal's voice trembled through the static, "cease your transmission." Kareth ignored her. "The council told us humans were animals. But the animal bows. So tell me, Marshal, what does that make us?" The hologram flickered, then vanished. For a moment no one moved. The battlefield lay still under the eerie glow of burning sky. Rian looked at Kareth, the faintest trace of fatigue crossing his face. "They'll come again," he said quietly. "Harder this time." Kareth holstered his weapon. "Then I'll be ready. I've spent my life serving fear. Maybe it's time I serve something stronger." Rian turned toward the horizon, where the night bled into dawn. "Stronger isn't enough," he said. "It has to mean something." The two of them stood in silence as the first light touched the ravine, illuminating the kneeling warbeast and the human who had commanded no army, no fleet, only respect. Far above, the council fleets hesitated on the edge of orbit, their orders suddenly uncertain. And for the first time in centuries, the galaxy saw a human not as a monster to be hunted, but as a force that could make even creation itself remember how to bow. The dawn that followed was quiet. Too quiet for a world that had just witnessed defiance broadcast across the stars. The sun rose through a bruised horizon, burning its light across the ravine and the shattered remains of the council strike force. Smoke curled into the wind, carrying the metallic scent of ruined machines and the faint tang of ozone. Rian stood at the ridge's edge, armor scorched and dusted in ash. Below him, the Silith warbeast rested, its massive form coiled like a sentinel awaiting command. Kareth approached, limping slightly, a bandage wrapped around his shoulder. "Transmission went through," he said, voice hoarse. "Council channels are in chaos. Half of them think it's a deep fake, the other half think the myths are returning." Rian gave no reply. His gaze remained fixed on the horizon, where flashes of distant light marked orbital movement, council ships regrouping. "They'll verify it," he said quietly. "And when they do, they'll send something worse than soldiers." Kareth lowered himself onto a nearby rock, exhaling sharply. "You expected this." "I counted on it," Rian said. "They need to see what fear looks like when it stops obeying them." Kareth looked up, his amber eyes thoughtful. "You're not what I expected a myth to be." Rian almost smiled. "I'm not what I expected either." A low rumble rolled through the ground, steady and growing. Kareth's hand moved instinctively to his sidearm. They're coming already? No, Rian murmured, his voice almost reverent. That's not them. The earth split open 100 meters away, plates of rock sliding aside as if peeled by invisible hands. From the fissure rose a structure, ancient, angular, pulsing with the same faint blue light that had traced Rian's traps earlier. It was not metal but something older, living and humming with memory. Kareth stared, jaw tightening. What is that? Humanity's last gift, Rian said. Before the purge, before the silence. We called it the vault. As they descended the slope toward it, Kareth could feel the hum through his armor. The structure recognized Rian, light followed his steps, symbols flickering across its surface. When he reached the center, a column rose, projecting a soft holographic sphere that spun with fractal constellations. It wasn't a weapon. It was a record. Kareth's voice trembled slightly. This is proof. History they buried. Rian nodded. The council erased us because they feared what we remembered, what we could become when pushed. But fear doesn't erase truth. It just delays it. Kareth stepped closer to the projection, mesmerized by the shifting lights. If you release this, the galaxy will fracture. That's the point, Rian said. It needs to fracture. Then it can heal. A sharp tone cut through their conversation. Kareth's wrist console flared red. Incoming transmission, unsecured frequency. A familiar voice bled through the static, the council marshal. Human, she said, tone iron still. You've ignited a rebellion you can't contain. Surrender now and your survival will be considered. Rian didn't even look at the comm. They always sound so polite when they mean to kill you. Kareth frowned. You can't win a war against them. I'm not trying to, Rian replied. I'm giving the galaxy a choice. The war beast stirred behind them, lifting its head as if sensing what was to come. The air crackled with static energy, and above, streaks of white began to pierce the sky. Council drop ordnance, precision-guided and burning fast. Kareth's pulse surged. They're targeting us. Rian didn't move. Not yet. He raised his wrist and tapped the console embedded in his gauntlet. The vault's light expanded, casting a dome of shimmering brilliance across the ravine. The air vibrated with low-frequency resonance, deep enough to rattle bones. Then everything stopped. The ordnance froze midair, missiles, plasma bolts, and debris, all suspended in a halo of arrested motion. Kareth stared, unable to comprehend. How? Rian's voice was calm, quiet. You thought we only built weapons to kill. Some were built to protect. He turned to Kareth. Once I release this record, there's no turning back. You still have time to leave. Kareth looked at the suspended sky, the living machine beneath their feet, and the man who defied extinction itself. You think I can walk away after seeing this? Rian regarded him for a long moment, then nodded. Then we finish this together. The vault began to pulse faster, light spilling outward like ripples on water. The projection of stars resolved into faces, thousands of them. Humans, soldiers, scientists, explorers. Echoes of a species the galaxy had erased, each image flickering with life for a heartbeat before fading into the next. The transmission burst outward in all directions, carried by quantum relays still hidden throughout forgotten systems. Across the galaxy, every council broadcast was interrupted by the same image. A man standing before the bowed predator, surrounded by the ghosts of his people. On the council's capital world, chaos erupted. Civilian networks froze. Old doubts reignited. The myth had a face. Back in the ravine, the light began to dim. The vault was burning itself out. Kareth glanced at Rian. The energy's collapsing, you'll be caught in it. Rian shook his head. It's tied to me. It won't stop until I do. Kareth's throat tightened. You planned this. You knew it would kill you. Rian met his gaze. It's not death if it means we're remembered. The sky blazed white as the energy surge reached critical. Kareth was thrown backward by the force, his armor shielding him from the shockwave. When he opened his eyes, the ravine was a crater of glass. The vault was gone. The war beast lay still, eyes dim. And Rian was nowhere to be seen. Kareth rose unsteadily, scanning the horizon. Only silence answered. Then, faintly, a voice echoed through his calm, fragmented but unmistakably human. Tell them we weren't monsters. Tell them we endured. The signal faded. Kareth stood alone beneath the vast sky, the first light of morning cutting through the lingering haze. In his chest, something unfamiliar stirred, a conviction that could not be ordered or silenced. He turned toward the ruins where a single fragment of the vault still glowed faintly in the dirt. Within its shimmer for a moment, he thought he saw Rian's reflection smiling back. Above him, Council fleets shifted nervously in orbit, their sensors flooded by millions of simultaneous transmissions of the event. Across the galaxy, civilizations paused. The myth had returned not as terror but as truth. Kareth holstered his weapon, looked to the horizon, and whispered to the wind, "The predator bows no more." And far beyond the Council's reach, in the quiet between stars, something ancient stirred awake, no longer a legend, but the beginning of humanity's next dawn.